who should you play in Marvel Rivals based on your Paladins main. So most of you guys will know that I play a lot of Paladins, but recently I've been playing a lot of Marvel Rivals. So in this video I will teach you who you should main in Marvel Rivals based on your Paladins main. But do keep in mind that there's gonna be a lot of same characters here because there's over 40 plus characters in Paladins, and in Marvel Rivals there's only around 20 plus so far. So do expect a lot of same characters here. They're gonna be quite similar in terms of playstyle and how they work, but do not expect them to be entirely the same because at the end of the day the Paladins characters are quite unique. So we're gonna start off with flankers and then supports, tanks, and then we're gonna do damage last. So if you main Androxus in Paladins, in Marvel Rivals you should probably play Hela. Hela is actually very similar to Androxus. Her primary attack is very similar to Androxus. She can also kind of fly, but she cannot dash multiple times. She has that little floating effect where she doesn't fall right away. She doesn't have reversal, but her ult is also very similar to Androxus, where you fly up in the air and then you just AoE damage. So it's actually very similar to Androxus. So if you main Androxus, you should probably main Hela. Now if you main Buck in Paladins, I would say the closest is probably Wolverine. Wolverine is also like a flanker. You jump in and then you just kill people really easily. He doesn't have a healing, but he does have a damage reduction ability, so you take less damage, so it's kind of like his healing ability. He also doesn't really have a shotgun, but he's a close range melee character. But in terms of playstyle, they're quite similar. Now if you main Caspian in Paladins, I would say maybe Star-Lord is the closest you have as Caspian. Now these guys are actually not even that close. Caspian is quite unique of a character, so it's kind of hard to find a similar character like Caspian. They're also like a very aggressive playstyle, so if you play Caspian very aggressively and like a flanker, you can play Star-Lord like an aggressive flanker as well, so that works out for you. Now Eevee is probably the hardest to find a similar character because she's a very unique character. I'm just gonna have to say Black Panther for now. Their abilities are completely different from one another, but the only reason why I said Black Panther is because of their playstyle. They're like a really good flankers where they go in, go out really quick, go in, go out really quick. That is literally the only reason why I picked Black Panthers, because their playstyle are similar, but in terms of abilities, not even close. If you main Kazumi in Paladins, you should probably main Scarlet Witch, because Scarlet Witch also has kind of like this aimbot, so if you're kind of familiar with that primary attack, Scarlet Witch is really good for you. Scarlet Witch can also turn into like this little spirit form, so that's also very similar to you. She also has this right click ability where she kind of deals more damage if you want to, so they're actually both very similar. So if you play Kazumi a lot, you should probably main Scarlet Witch. Now if you main Koga in Paladins, you should main Star-Lord in Marvel Rivals. Yeah, I've been saying a lot of Star-Lord because he's like the most like normal flanker, but I think Koga and Star-Lord are very similar because of the kind of like submachine guns. So you have that. You can also dodge, so kind of like Koga. If you main Maeve in Paladins, you should main Psylocke in Marvel Rivals. Now I actually main Psylocke, so I can definitely confirm to you that Psylocke is very similar to Maeve. They can both dash around. Mind you, Psylocke can also dash 2 times like Maeve. Their primary attack are quite similar, not very similar, but they're quite similar. And with Psylocke you can also gain movement speed by going invisible, so that's basically her prowl, you know. And if you main Sky and Paladins, I would also say Psylocke is your main, because their primary attack are also very similar. Psylocke can also go invisible, like I said. Their playstyle are very similar to one another, although Sky cannot obviously dash around and stuff. Their playstyle are still very similar to one another, so I'd say you should main Psylocke. Now if you main Lex in Paladins, you should main, again, it's gonna be Star-Lord. Like I said earlier, you flank around with Star-Lord, you can also dodge around. They're not very similar, but in terms of playstyle, they're quite similar. And now if you main Talos, it's sad to say, you should also main Star-Lord. The only reason why I say Star-Lord is because their primary attack are similar, but Talos is a very unique character. I don't even know who to say for Talos, so if you have any ideas, you can let me know down in the comments below, but I just say for now, it has to be Star-Lord. Now if you main Seven in Paladins, you should probably main Spider-Man in Marvel Rivals. They're very aggressive playstyle. They can also both grapple around in the map. Although Spider-Man is definitely way more harder to play than Seven, but in terms of playstyle and grappling around and stuff, they're very similar. But I do just want to say Spider-Man is a melee. He doesn't have a gun, so yeah, you're gonna have to get very close to your enemy. Now Now if you main Vatu in Paladins, you should play Black Panther. They're both very aggressive. They both dash around multiple times. They're both very hard to play as well. Then Black Panther is the closest Vatu you can ever see. Now if you main Vora in Paladins, you should play Spider-Man and Marvel Rivals. Their only similarity is the fact that they can poke around and stuff and then get away. Spider-Man can also grapple around, like I said earlier. So I feel like grappling around or like tenduling around, then Spider-Man is the closest Vora for you. But I do have a hot take. I think Psylocke is also very similar to Vora. And the reason why I find Psylocke similar to Vora is because of their playstyle. Not really with the abilities, because Vora can obviously not go invis and she doesn't have dashes, but the way they play is very similar because you can poke around and then after you poke them, you can play aggressively. You can be medium range to short range and you can just poke your enemies, but it's only in terms of playstyle, not really the abilities. If you main Zin and Paladins, you should probably main Iron Fist and Marvel Rivals. Iron Fist is actually very similar to Zin. They're very aggressive flankers. Iron Fist can also block damage, kind of like Zin, although he doesn't deflect it to the enemies. He's just blocking them to get bonus health. Their playstyle also very similar, where you kind of sneak around and then killing the supports and stuff. Iron Fist is definitely very similar to Zin. Now let's move on with supports, and the first support is Corvus. If you main Corvus in Paladins, you should main Luna Snow. They're not very similar in terms of primary attack because Luna Snow clearly doesn't have a gun, but in terms of marking people, you can easily mark your flanker, and every time you heal someone else, the person you marked, they also get healing, so it's very similar to Corvus. Her ult is kinda similar to Corvus as well, but not entirely. With Corvus, you put down this AoE healing and slowing down your enemies, but with Luna Snow, it's also an AoE healing, but it doesn't slow the enemy. You can either just damage boost or healing boost. If you main Furia, I would say you should main Mantis. Mantis is like kind of like a damagey support, which is very similar to Furia because Furia is like a damage support as well. With Mantis, you can heal your allies easily and you can also damage boost. So it's basically the same with Furia's ultimate, where it's like a damage boost, but with Mantis, it's not an ultimate. It's literally just an ability that you can damage boost your allies. And not only that, you can also stun people, kind of like her beam, because her beam can obviously stun. Mantis also has a stun ability. Now if you main Grok in Paladins, I would say the closest is maybe Loki. It's a little bit of a question mark for me because they are kind of similar, but Loki is way more harder to play than Grok. First of all, Loki can put down these illusions and then put like a little lamp to heal your allies, so that's basically like his totems, like Grok. He can also go invisible, kinda like Grok, but in terms of playstyle, putting down totems and stuff, Loki is kinda like that already. Now if you mean Grover, he doesn't have a very similar character in Marvel Rivals actually. Maybe Rocket Raccoon maybe? With Rocket Raccoon, you just heal a lot. You heal a lot. They're not very similar in terms of abilities, but in terms of playstyle, Raccoon can also go damage if you want to. Their ult are not very similar though, because with Grover it's like an AoE healing. You can also kinda argue maybe Cloak and Dagger is very similar to Grover because she heals quite a lot as well, and her ultimate is quite similar to Grover as well. It's kinda just up to you. To me, Grover is quite unique of a character, so it's kinda hard to find a similar character. Now if you main Ayo in Paladins, I would definitely say Cloak and Dagger is your best shot. Cloak and Dagger, you have a homing healing ability, which is kind of similar to Ayo because you don't need to that much aiming with Ayo, you just need to look at them and then it heals. Cloak and Dagger don't have a pet, but this is only in terms of playstyle. In terms of playstyle, they're very similar. Now if you main Genos, I would definitely say Mantis is your closest character because Mantis can kind of like mark your allies. You don't need to like look at them and heal them. You can literally just whoop, mark them and then you can look away. So in terms of playstyle, they're quite similar. If you main Lilith, I would say Invisible Woman is the right character for you. In terms of playstyle, they're quite hard to play as well. Invisible Woman primary attack can pierce through allies and enemy, so very similar to Lilith. With Lilith, you can mark allies to heal them. Invisible Woman doesn't have that, but you have the shield that can it's kinda similar to a mark, I guess. You can also jump as Invisible Woman, so you have the same escape ability like with Lilith. If you main Maldamba in Paladins, I would say again it has to be Mantis. Mantis is like the damage support, like I said earlier. In terms of healing, they're not very similar because like I said earlier, Mantis you kind of mark mark your allies. In terms of healing, Cloak and Dagger is for you, but in terms of like stunning enemies and playing a bit more aggressive, then Mantis is for you, so it's kind of just up to you. Now if you main Moji and Paladins, I'd say maybe Jeff is the closest for you. The way they heal is quite similar. With Moji you can also kind of shield your allies. With Jeff you can give them bubble so they get more healing. I think if you play Moji, I think you'll get the hang of Jeff really easily. If you main Pip and Paladins, you would definitely main Rocket because their healing ability are very similar, their escape ability are very similar. So if you like playing Pip because of his escape ability and in terms of healing, then Rocket is very similar to that. They can both be very hard to kill if you know what you're doing with them. If you main Ray in Paladins, I'd say the closest Ray is Adam Warlock. You can link your allies, so if you like linking on people kind of like Ray, Adam Warlock you can link on your allies as well. So it's an AoE healing, and as you guys all know, Ray's healing ability, it kind of like bounces on people. With Adam Warlock it's the same thing, it bounces on people. You can also bond them so they take less damage. Same thing with Ray, you have damage reduction with Ray, and with Ray's ultimate you protect one ally. With Adam Warlock you can res your entire team. You heard me correctly, you can res your entire team if they're dead. Now if you main Ceres in Paladins, I'd say maybe Jeff, I would say, because Jeff heals a lot and Jeff is also a beginner friendly character. I would definitely say though, if you're one of those damage Ceres mains, Jeff is definitely not for you. I'm only strictly talking about if you're a healing Ceres. If you're one of those damage Ceres mains, I would definitely say Mantis is for you. But if you're a healer Ceres, then I'd say Jeff is for you. If you main Ying and Paladins, I'd definitely say Loki is the character for you. They're basically the same character. You can put down illusions, you can heal with those illusions, you can teleport to those illusions. In terms of playstyle and abilities, they're actually very similar with one another. So if you main Ying and Paladins, you should definitely main Loki. Alright, now let's move on with tanks. If you main Ashe and Paladins, I'd say Captain America is the closest main for you, because Captain America is the off tank in Marvel Rivals. He's not normally like the point tank pushing the payload and stuff. No, you like annoy the supports and stuff. In terms of abilities, they're not very similar, but in terms of playstyle, they're very similar. Their ult are also very close actually. With Ashe, you're like immortal for a few seconds as long as you stay around the radius, but with Captain America, you can actually move around and you have bonus health, so it's a lot harder for you to die. Now Alice is a very unique character. I'd say maybe Doctor Strange. She's definitely the closest in terms of playstyle. First of all, you have a massive shield like Alice. Their primary attack are quite similar. You can also put down this portal with Doctor Strange, so I feel like doing that. And with Doctor Strange as well, his ultimate is like AoE stun, like a AoE stun, but you can still hit them. They wouldn't be able to move, but you still be able to hit them, which is really cool. If you main Azan and Paladins, I would definitely say Thor is for you. Their abilities are kind of similar, but in terms of playstyle, they're definitely similar. They go off tank, they just fuck the team and they just do whatever the hell they want. They can both dash around, kind of like Azan, and Thor can also do that. Their ult are very similar actually. You fly up in the air and then you slam on people, so they're, in terms of ult, they're also very similar. So if you like Azan, Thor is definitely the right character for you. If you main Barrick and Paladins, I would definitely say Penny Parker is for you. Penny Parker doesn't have any turrets, but their playstyle are very similar, because with Barrick you put down these turrets and then you kind of like protect that area. With Penny Parker it's the same thing. You kind of protect that area, you can put down these mines, you can put down traps. They're not similar in terms of abilities, but in terms of playstyle, they're very similar. Fernando. Now Fernando, you can actually main a lot in Marvel Rivals. First one is Magneto. First of all, I mean Magneto's shield is literally Fernando. They're like very similar. And Magneto, you can also shield your allies or yourself. So if you want to protect them, kind of like Fernando's ultimate, you can protect them if you want to. You also have kind of like this ability where you knock back enemies and doing a lot of damage. That's basically Fernando's fireball. You can also kind of argue Doctor Strange is very similar to Fernando because they have a massive shield. Their playstyle are also very similar, but I would definitely lean more towards Magneto. If you main Inara in Paladins, I would definitely say Groot is the right character for you, because both of these characters can put down walls, and with Groot it's all about walling your enemies and stuff. You can block corridors, you can block them from running away. Their playstyle are very similar and their ultimates are also very similar. similar. You like stun them and stuff. Very similar abilities and also very similar playstyle. Now Khan is one of those characters where they're very unique, but I'm just gonna have to say Magneto again, because Magneto also has a shield. With Khan you can heal your allies, but with Magneto, instead of healing them, you can shield them if you want to protect them. They're not very similar in terms of abilities, but in terms of playstyle, they're quite similar. Now Makoa is also one of those characters where they're quite unique. There's no one in Marvel Rivals that can like hook people around and stuff. I'm just gonna have to say maybe Thor. Thor is nowhere near close as Makoa. The only reason why I said Thor is because their playstyle are quite similar. You kind of play aggressively with them, and they're not just staying on the point. They can just do whatever the fuck they want. If you main Nyx, I'm gonna have to say Magneto as well. Tanks in Marvel Rivals are very limited. I think there's only like 8 or something like that. So you will see a lot of repeated characters here. And the reason why I said this is because their shield are similar. Their playstyle are similar as well. If you like playing Nyx as like this normal point tank and like kind of chunky, very hard to kill, Magneto is definitely for you. Now if you main Rum in Paladins, I would definitely say Captain America is for you, because Captain America can also just run around as fast as possible if you want to. You also like annoy your supports and stuff. They're also just very chunky and very hard to kill. So if you like that kind of playstyle, then Captain America is for you. If you main Rukas, I'd definitely say Venom is the closest main for you. Now they're not similar in terms of abilities, but in terms of playstyle, Venom is definitely the closest for you, because you kind of just go on your way by yourself, trying to annoy the supports or like the back lane. And Venom also has the shield, kind of like Rukus, but the only problem here is that Venom doesn't have dashes. He has a tendril. Yeah, your escape is way better actually. Now if you main Terminus, I would definitely say Hulk is the right character for you. They're actually very similar in terms of playstyle, so they're both melee characters. They can both jump as well. With Terminus you can like revive from the dead, but with Hulk you don't die right away. If you die as Hulk, you turn into this Bruce Banner, you turn tiny, and then you have a gun. His ultimate does make him a lot bigger, so if you die multiple times you don't actually die. So in terms of abilities and playstyle, they're actually quite similar. Torvald, now the closest Torvald I can think of is Magneto yet again, because with Torvald you can like shield your allies and stuff, and you can also shield yourself. With Magneto it's the same thing. You can shield yourself, you can shield your allies. If you like helping people as well as being a tank, then Magneto is for you. And if you main Yagoroth, I would definitely say Venom is the right main for you, because Venom is also one of those characters where they like kind of they just do their own thing. They go at the back, disrupt the supports or the back lanes, and then go away if they need to. So kind of like Yagoroth. They're not very similar in terms of abilities. Yagoroth is very unique of a character, but in terms of playstyle, they're quite similar. Now let's move on with damage. So Bere La Bomba is definitely Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl is also an AoE damage dealer, so if you like staying at the back and just spamming, then Squirrel Girl is definitely for you. The way they escape is also very similar, because Berry can jump around and stuff, and would you look at that, Squirrel Girl can also jump around and stuff. You also have a stun ability. Although Berry doesn't have a stun, you have a stun now, I guess. Now Bumpkin is one of those characters where they're also very unique. I'm just gonna have to say Squirrel Girl again because of the AoE damage and stuff. You can also just jump around as well, kind of like BK, and their ult are also quite similar actually. With BK you kind of like roll around and hit them with your ult. With Squirrel Girl you like throw these squirrels that will hunt down enemies. So in terms of abilities, they can be a little bit similar, but it's not a bomb. You cannot detonate and stuff like that. You just spam. If you main Cassie, then I would maybe say Winter Soldier. They're not very similar in terms of abilities, but in terms of playstyle, they're very similar. They're usually like mid-range to long range if you want to. You can also kind of argue maybe Hawkeye is similar as well, because their playstyle are also quite similar with the long range and stuff. Again, not very similar in terms of abilities, but in terms of playstyle, they're quite similar. The Dredge. Now, Dredge is most likely gonna be Squirrel Girl again because of the spamming. Squirrel Girl is just your character if you like to spam. So if you play this spammer characters, although Squirrel Girl cannot teleport around, in terms of playstyle, they're quite similar. If you main Drogos in Paladins, you should main Iron Man. Now, these two characters are actually very similar, so obviously they can fly around. Their primary attack are very similar. With Drogos you can spit on enemies, but with Iron Man you can beam them, and with Drogos you can shoot really fast. With Iron Man you can also shoot really fast, kills with this ability. Drogo's ultimate is a one-hit combo, you die. With Iron Man, it's a one-hit combo, you die. They're definitely very similar. Imani. Now, Imani is a very unique character, so the closest one, I just have to say Storm. Now, Imani cannot fly, but with Storm, you're gonna be flying around and stuff. But you can swap around, kind of like Imani, because with Imani, you can either be ice or fire, but with Storm, you can either be damage boosting yourself or movement boost. They're definitely not similar in terms of abilities, but with the playstyle, they're actually very close. Now, if you mean Kinessa, I mean, there's only one character that is similar to Kinessa, which is Black Widow, because there's only one sniper right now in Marvel Rivals, which is Black Widow. So if you like playing snipers, then definitely Black Widow is for you. In terms of abilities, then obviously not the same, because Black Widow doesn't have a teleporter. But in terms of playstyle and playing sniper, then definitely Black Widow is for you. Lian, I'm just gonna have to say Winter Soldier again. They're not very similar in terms of abilities, but with playstyle, they're actually quite similar. They don't usually play that aggressive. You can if you want to, but it's most of the time you're just at the back shooting people and stuff. So if you like that kind of playstyle, then Winter Soldier is for you. Now, if you mean Octavia, I'm gonna have to say maybe Hawkeye. I do know Hawkeye has a bow and arrow, which is not very similar to Octavia, but in terms of playstyle, they're very similar. You just stay at the back shooting people. You can also kind of argue maybe the Punisher, because with the Punisher you have this assault rifle as well, kind of like Octavia. You can just have an assault rifle if you want to. It's kind of just up to you. Octavia is also a very unique character. It's so hard to find a similar character for her. If you main Omen, I'm gonna have to say maybe Namor, because their primary attack are quite similar, and you can also put like this octopus. Omen cannot put octopus and stuff, but their ult are also quite similar, because it's like a tiny AoE damage that deals a lot of damage. With Namor's ultimate, it's kind of similar, but it's a lot bigger rages. So in terms of playstyle, they are quite similar, but in terms of abilities, they're not even close to similar. If you main Sati, you're gonna have to main Winter Soldier again. Yeah, you're gonna hear Winter Soldier a lot in this video, because there's not a lot of like damagey heroes in Marvel Rivals. Most of the damage heroes in Marvel Rivals, they're kind of like a flanker. So Winter Soldier is definitely the closest for you because of their primary attack. Now, if you main Shaolin, obviously you're gonna have to main Hawkeye. Hawkeye is also a bow user. If you like using bows and stuff, then obviously Hawkeye is for you. Although you cannot go invisible with Hawkeye, in terms of playstyle, they're very similar. Strix, like I said earlier, there's only one sniper currently in Marvel Rivals, which is Black Widow. So if you like playing snipers and stuff, Black Widow is the only character for you. If you main Tiberius, then you're definitely gonna like Moon Knight, because they're actually very similar. Their attacks, like, they kind of like bounce around and stuff. They can also jump around if they want to, kind of like Tiberius. But in terms of playstyle, they're definitely very similar because of the bouncing effect. Now, if you main Tyra, and if you main Victor, and if you main Vivian, there's only one character for you, which is the Punisher. Because Tyra, Victor, and Vivian, they're very like kind of like a default character, and Punisher is the closest one like that. His ultimate does lean more towards kind of like Vivian's ultimate, but yeah, he's like the most default character in Marvel Rivals. And if you main Willow and Paladins, you are gonna have to main Squirrel Girl in Marvel Rivals, because again, Squirrel Girl is an AoE damage dealer. So if you like doing AoE damage and not like a single target character, then Squirrel Girl is for you. They're not very similar in terms of abilities, but again, playstyle, they're quite similar. So guys, let me know down in the comments below, who would you guys main in Marvel Rivals? And you guys also can correct me down in the comments below if you guys find someone more similar to that specific character. It is hard to find similar characters like these heroes because Paladins characters are quite unique. So some of these characters might not even be very similar to them. I just had to like pick which one is very similar in terms of their playstyle. But yeah, anyways, that's it for today guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time. See you everybody.